Welcome to the Entrepreneurial Biome podcast, a space for nurturing the ecosystem of business, body, and living. What would it be like if you gave your body a leadership role in your business and chose greater happiness every day? These are the conditions that create a healthy biome and a thriving business. I'm your host, Heather Nichols, and I'm so happy you're here. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Entrepreneurial Biome podcast. It is January 15th. And it feels to me like I just had like a month off, which has been so delicious. There's been a lot of cool things that I've been doing. And this holiday season seemed to just sort of go on for me in a great way. And a lot has changed. And I've been having a lot of different conversations with people about what's up now, like how different the world is, how different we are, a lot of new possibilities that are available, a totally different space of creation that's available. And it's one of those moments where I think it's, you can either kind of like freak out because a lot of the energies that used to be kind of familiar energies for a lot of us are gone. Or you can celebrate, get curious, get into a space of wonder and relax, and start to explore what is here. So often when there's big change, it actually feels like things have gone away, and like there's a space of kind of silence in a way, and like a lot of times it seems like a whole lot of nothing going on, when it's actually like so much more spacious. Like there's so much more, there's so much less noise in the field and less heaviness, less solidity. And so many of us are so used to functioning from solidity and heaviness and noise. And we're used to that. Like we're accustomed to that, and we adapt to that, and we relate to that, and we orient to that, and then when it goes away or it changes, or we change, all of the above, we change. Excuse me. We change, things change, the world changes when we change. It's like a big old, now what do I do? Now how do I function? And there's a lot of really good news around that I want to share with you today. So many things. So many things. So one of the conversations we've been having in Access Consciousness is about our psychic abilities with the world. And this comes from the kind of the premise, I would say, like the one of the underlying or like predominant kind of awarenesses that Access is created from, which is the acknowledgement that so many of us, the seekers of the world that we call humanoids, like people looking for something different, people looking for a greater possibility, people that see all kinds of different scenarios and possibilities, and don't really do well with like fixed reality, have a lot of psychic capacities. Some of us acknowledge that, some of us don't. I know for me, it's been a big part of my journey to acknowledge it more and more all the time. And our psychic capacities are, it's not what you think of when you think of psychic, a person who's like, telling your future or whatever, who knows what's going to happen. And sometimes we do know what's going to happen. We don't always have the cognitive awareness of it, but we have energetic awareness more often than not. But we have this ability to constantly pick up on other people's thoughts, feelings, and emotions all over the place. And it's actually going on for most of us most of the time. And it's been one of the very life-saving tools from Access Consciousness for me and for a lot of people that I know, to acknowledge this. Like, we're incredibly aware. We're aware of the earth. We're aware of other people. We're aware of the universe. You might know there's an earthquake that's going to happen before it happens, but you may not know that cognitively, but your body might start to freak out, or your body might give you some awareness. We all hear these stories of animals that know, well, we're like animals when we don't have our mind and when we're not thinking and functioning from cognition. And so we have all of this awareness. And what we do when we have psychic abilities with the world, we only allow those energetic capacities, the awareness that we have that is so magnificent that we can use to create anything we desire. We only allow it to be contextual in the world that we see. So there's all this energetic awareness of the future, of other people's thoughts, feelings, emotions, of different things going on the planet, and we have to contextualize it, put it into reality, like fixed reality, solid reality, organize it through other people's universes. And so we'll look to other people, and this is all very energetic, but we look to other people and we kind of like bounce our awareness off of them, run it through their world, and come up with kind of a more appropriate, way of being. And again, we don't know that we're doing this. Like, this is all very fast, very energetic. It's like instant in a way. And it's part of the kind of adaptive capacities that so many of us have developed to actually make it work, to be really different creatures on this planet. And I didn't, when I first found the tools of access consciousness, I had no idea how different I was. I really did not. I had literally, Gary Douglas, the founder of Access, he said to me, "Have you acknowledged the difference that you be?" And I was like, what are you even talking about? Like, I am not different. And I just thought I was really pretty normal. And, I had done kind of normal life. I went to, college and graduate school. I got married. I had babies. I did the things that you're supposed to do, follow the track, right? And all of that was, I'm really grateful and glad that I chose it all. And, but what I didn't give myself growing up, because I didn't know, was this, awareness, like the awareness of how different I was, and that there might be different choices available to me that I hadn't considered. And again, I don't regret any of it. I love my life and I'm really happy with what I've created. And it's been so eye-opening for me to, really look as an adult, and as I get older, and, now my kids are adults basically. And it's like to look and say, well, okay, so what's actually true for me? And this is something that is a huge part of how I work with people. And what we do a lot in Access Consciousness classes is look at what is true for you as a unique being, as a unique creature on the planet. What's true for you? And when you start to get a sense of you as a creature, more than like a person who has a personality and who has like all these ways that you relate to everybody around you and orient to everybody around you and fit yourself into all of the structures of the world, that can be so suffocating for people. And they don't even know it because they don't know that there's something different that's possible. But when you are constantly slotting yourself and your awareness into other people's worlds, solidifying it, making it relevant, making it real, making you real by orienting to the worlds of others, then we lose the brilliance and the gift and the capacities that we are as very different energetic beings. And in Access, one of the terms we have for this is X-Men. So the X-Men are kind of an extreme humanoid, like people that they're such energetic beings, and they don't necessarily know it, but they really have a lot of awareness and a lot of energetic stuff going on all the time. And if you have to, like, you're not in this reality, you know, in the, like this, the world as we know it, which we refer to a lot of times in Access as this reality. In this reality, you're not, there's only like a certain number of, there's about, you know, a certain number of like storylines that we can work off of, and a certain way of functioning that fits, you know, and then there's like the fringe a little bit, but there's so many possibilities totally beyond that, of things that have never existed before, ways of being, ways of creating that have never existed before, that we, as these different beings on the planet, actually know. We know something about that. And as things start to crumble, fall apart, I mean, we have, you know, we've had the fires in Los Angeles. We have a new president taking office in the United States. Next week. The sneezes always come in threes for me. So, you know, there's a lot of change in the world, and, you know, elsewhere in the world, there's wars going on. Like, there's so much happening, and it's all part of the, like, the pulse and, you know, the things that we're perceiving in the world. And for very, you know, very energetically aware people, like, we notice that, and unless you really know what's going on, unless you have this conversation of like what occurs when you are that different, when you are an energetic being, when you function more energetically and you don't even know it, unless you have that awareness, you don't necessarily, you don't kind of like know how to be with it. And so you're just going to look to what already exists, in order to give yourself a context for you. But you don't fit. If this applies to you, if this is resonating with you, perhaps you don't fit into this world. And we have a way in this reality of, you know, giving those types of people diagnoses, you know, ADD, ADHD, OCD, autistic. There's all kinds of diagnoses in the DSM, which is a psychological manual for diagnosing mental illness. There's so many different ways that we say, well, this person is beyond, you know, this person is kind of like, they don't function like the rest of us, so they have a disorder. And it's funny because I have a master's degree in social work, and I was a psychotherapist for many years, and I actually never studied the DSM. It was, I didn't have that as a requirement in graduate school, thank goodness. I had no desire to study it. I was like, I don't want to know, I don't want to like be part of that conversation, you know. I'd rather see the gifts and the strengths of my clients rather than the weaknesses. And then I found this X-Men conversation, and I became a facilitator of the X-Men classes in Access Consciousness. And I started to, you know, really learn about how all of these different diagnoses are actually our greatness. Like, it's really this part of us that is so different and able to actually create a different future that is so different than what already exists. And really evolutionary. We're like on the evolutionary edge of reality, and just so different. And you have to be willing to function as an energetic being in order to live in that way. And it takes a lot of courage, and I'll get a little bit more into that. But when I started to learn about how all of these things that are seemingly wrong are actually a greatness, and to learn about the energetic capacities kind of that we've made wrong and diagnosed, and that are expressed through all of this, rather than, you know, seen as part of our greatness. I it created so much freedom for me. It was so liberating. And I started to realize, everything that goes on in my world is an energetic awareness. Like, it's all energetic awareness. And when I started to realize that, it was like, okay, this is groundbreaking. This is so life-changing for me. And because I know I started to develop this muscle that I call flipping it. So this muscle of where I start to go into judgment of myself for something, like something's weird, something's off. I feel funky. I'm upset. I'm anxious. I'm depressed, whatever it may be. I start to, go into that and like as the wrongness, which so many of us do. And that's a characteristic of X-Men and humanoids, is that we tend to see ourselves as wrong rather than get curious about how we're different. So I would start to go into the wrongness, and then, but with the information from the X-Men classes and material and all of this awareness, like being unleashed in my own world, I could just immediately flip it and start to get curious. And this is basically how I live my life, is get curious about, oh, well, what's the gift here? What's the capacity here? What am I aware of that I'm not acknowledging? How is this being expressed as, like what's the awareness? What are the energies that I'm present with that maybe nobody else is noticing? And celebrate the difference of me as a unique creature, as we all are. Now, not everybody's willing to be a unique creature. A lot of people on the planet are very, very invested in this reality, the solidification, the trauma drama, all of these things. A lot of people are very invested in that. And those are, not your people, probably. Like, if you're listening to this, like, I don't imagine you would have gotten this far in this podcast if this didn't speak to you in some way, And so the people that really are invested in keeping everything solid and unchanging and not looking at the energetics of things and looking at the wrongness of things, like, that's just a different type of a person. And they're not wrong. But when you recognize that they function really differently, and you're never going to be able to do that. Like, for me, I was like, I can't actually do that. Like, I debilitate myself when I do that. Then you can start to like explore the greatness of you, the brilliance of you, the psychic awareness that you have of the entire universe, the capacities that you have with awareness that is of the whole universe. And as you start to live more from that space and function more from that space, it's like everything becomes possible and everything becomes available. And this is where we actually really have a very, very dynamic creative advantage that I will talk more about. But so there's this thing of having our psychic awareness with the world, where everything has to be put into context. Everything has to be referenced through other people. And we literally take our greatest capacities of being different, having different awareness, new possibilities, things that haven't existed before, ways of functioning that haven't existed before, literally being on like the frontier of creation as beings on this planet, as energetic beings who have each one of us a unique awareness to create something very different. And we take that and we just shrink it, we solidify it, we try to define it, and we just like put it into reality that is never going to be a source of nurturing us into more of the difference that we actually are. So when we look at psychic abilities with the world, we start to use those abilities basically against us. We debilitate ourselves by seeing ourselves as relevant in this reality and the solidity of everything. And it shows up all over the place. Like, for instance, like, I have developed, I have a capacity, and I think a lot of us do, but I have a capacity, and I've really developed it as well because I've prioritized it, and I choose to live more this way, of seeing the beauty in everything. And I don't mean that from a spiritual woo woo point of view. I literally, like, I just heard that somebody that I know lost their job, and the person that was texting me about it was like, "Oh, isn't this tragic?" And I'm like, "Oh, well, how cool! Like, maybe there's a greater job on the way." I that's how I see everything, and that's seen as so wrong because I'm not really good at participating in people's drama. That's when we participate in people's drama, that's psychic abilities with the world. I'm not really good at that. I don't have any desire to do that. I don't like to be involved in stories. I'd rather be using my energy exploring the frontiers of what else is possible in this beautiful world that we have, that has like so much possibility. Now, there are things in the world that are crazy, that are intense, that are very difficult for people, and it's not about negating that. It's not about being unkind. um and but a lot of times, it's like we have to sort of, I mean, for things like this, like you have to know sort of like who you can have these conversations with. And I don't mean, it's not about hiding you, but it is about just being aware of like what's going to create the most in any situation. And some people, someone just lost their job and they're committed to that, or like, the bigger thing of like the fires in Los Angeles, it's like that's a major deal for a lot of people. And it's not about not it's not about ignoring that. Like that's a huge, huge disaster. And I absolutely acknowledge that. And I also know, I trust the movement of consciousness. And I would say that if my own house burned down, absolutely. Like I've looked at that a lot. I mean, I think we all probably have taken stock of like, well, what would I grab? And, and the funny thing is I'm like, there's like 2 or 3 things that I would want to take. And the rest is sort of, I'm so grateful. I mean, I love all of my things, and, I love my home. And I also know that like my home is what I've created, and I trust my capacity to create more than anything. And I value my capacity to create more than I value anything material. And I know that's, I'm saying that from the comfort of my home that didn't burn down, and I'm sure I would have a lot more awareness if I were in that situation. So again, it's not about negating the experience of what people are going through. But I will say, if we all look at it as a travesty, a tragedy, the most horrible thing, how will you ever recover? It's like that we put energy into that. That's where we use our psychic capacities. And because people who are energetic creatures, who have a lot of awareness, we are incredibly potent. And this is where the creative piece of this really comes in, because our awareness and our energetic capacities have a potency that is beyond, especially when you're somebody, well, I'm just going to say that there's a potency that is beyond anything that you look at as an X-Men humanoid energetic creature. Anything that you look at, you exponentialize. And if you look at the X-Men movies, that's, there's a lot of that, these like, where it's like the power comes out, and you can use it for the creation of a future, and you can also use it dynamically against you. So anything that you look at, you give the power of your awareness to, you give your presence to, you give your energy to, it grows. So if I were to look at, like, say, the fires in LA and go, that is such a huge tragedy, nobody's ever going to recover, There's never going to be anything good that comes of this. Like, I feed that storyline. And that is one of the few storylines that exist in solid reality, in this reality, that like continuously perpetuate themselves. And anybody that feeds it feeds the perpetuation of that. And with all of the energetic change that's going on in the world right now, all of those storylines are really starting to kind of loosen their grip. And sometimes when those things change, there's actually kind of like a big, explosion on its way out, let's say, So there's a lot of shit going on right now in a lot of people's lives. And that's part of the sort of like death process, I would say, of the storylines and this reality. And I choose to, like, for me, I would rather give everybody who's going through difficult things the awareness of possibility. And that's something that, one of my favorite movies is Pollyanna. The old movie, the old version, with Haley Mills, I think her name is. It's not the cartoon version. I think there's a cartoon version, but anyway, it's a beautiful movie, because this little girl, I've probably even talked about it before, but this little girl there's such an innocence to her. And she's very much, I would say, an X-Men, and she doesn't censor herself. She doesn't judge herself. She doesn't really know how to judge, which is a lot of what happens in the worlds of X-Men. You learn that as you become educated. That's part of the education system, unfortunately, is and becoming an adult and raising a child, is like you teach them how to be discerning and how to judge. I'm interested in something very different. I've taught my children how to know, how to be aware, how to acknowledge themselves as different. And they get to choose, they don't necessarily value that in the way that I do, but I've given them that so they can do with it what they will. And they actually are fairly different, and they don't even know it. I think maybe they sort of do, but they've been raised with a lot of space and not very much judgment, at least on my end. So, and I'm not perfect by any means. I definitely have my things and have, changed a lot over the years. But anyway, so Pollyanna is this girl who doesn't know how to judge. Like, she doesn't do psychic abilities with the world, because she doesn't even pick up on the judgments of other people. They sort of just don't even land in her world anywhere. Like, they're not relevant to her at all. And there's nothing cognitive about it. She's a child. She's this beautiful, innocent, sort of naive, in a beautiful, refreshing way, child who's just like, oh, well, and she's always talking about what we can be glad about. And I mean, I guess you could say, there is a conversation kind of more ubiquitous than this around gratitude, having gratitude and how that contributes to us. Right. And so for her, it's being glad. It's being a sweet gift and seeing the world from this very refreshing, very different point of view. And in the movie, they, all the adults are sort of, nobody really takes her seriously, and they think she's crazy, and she's just a mess. And, by the end of the movie, she's melted this entire town into something very different. And they all show up for her in this really beautiful way. I love that movie because it really speaks to the power of this space. And I definitely am sure lots of people have considered me a Pollyanna, and that's fine. I mean, and it's actually funny because that word is even a judgment, and like, watch the movie and see how beautiful it is, because I'm interested in a world where we have more possibilities. And if I feed the trauma and drama of this world with my alignment and agreement with it, with my powerful energy, if I take my psychic awareness and I make it only relevant in the world and I have to funnel it through everything that already is, I debilitate myself. I debilitate what I can create. I diminish my future and the future, and I contribute to the perpetuation of all of that. That's not what I am here for. I'm here to create something different that hasn't existed before. And we can all do that in so many ways. It doesn't have to be big and grandiose. You don't have to have a podcast or teach classes or whatever, you know. You don't have to do it in that way. Like it can be just like having a conversation with somebody. I mean, that in and of itself is revolutionary because nobody talks to anybody anymore. Everybody just goes on their social media, you know. So, you know, just showing up in a different way in the world. And then also like really choosing in every moment, what do I desire to feed with my energy? Do I desire to feed impossibility, trauma, and drama, or do I desire to feed possibility? And that doesn't change the fact that, you know, a friend got laid off, people's homes have burned down, you know, it doesn't change that fact, you know, but what it does is contribute a different energy and a different space, even without opening my mouth, because I may not everybody can hear that, you know, so I'm going to be aware of what people can hear so that I am like continue. So, because if you try to give somebody something that they can't receive or they're not interested in, it's not really kind, and it's not going to create greater for anybody, you, them, anybody. So we have to really get that not everybody's asking for this perspective, you know, and that's okay. Not everybody has to choose it. Not everybody has to have it. It's one perspective, you know, it's just something that I like to play with and I like to share. So with that, as we silently or sometimes out loud feed the space of possibilities, like the awareness of a different future, the awareness that sometimes evolution is not a clean process, you know, change is sometimes very messy. There's a lot of times, a lot of deconstruction and destruction that has to occur that is part of creation. And that's also a big conversation we've been having lately in Access, is this idea of destruction and deconstruction being an essential element of creation. And there's so much judgment around destruction and deconstruction that doesn't allow, like, where there's this whole creative universe that gets kind of cut off. We cut ourselves off from, because we're afraid of the destruction and the deconstruction. When you see destruction and deconstruction as part of creation, then you get to have so many more possibilities for how the future can actually be different. And that's not something that's just going to happen on the planet. Like, we as people who have awareness of this, like, if this has any lightness for you, it's like, you know something about this. You know something about this that I don't know. You know something about this that nobody else knows. And when you start to give yourself the gift of the space of being that and having your psychic abilities with the universe, rather than with the world, and you start to allow the energetic awareness that you have and that you be to have a lot more space, a lot more silence to it. You start to really get comfortable with having no freaking idea what's going to happen next, where you're going. And you also know that it's going to be great. Like, whatever it looks like, it could be your house burning down as a massive opening into a different possibility, you know? And the more you have that point of view, the more you get to receive the creative possibilities of the universe. And this is where things really start to change, because we have this mantra in Access Consciousness, all of life comes to me with ease and joy and glory. And that mantra is, it really speaks to the choice to live your life from and as that space of ease, of joy, and of glory, which is this exuberance and abundance and this expression of like the aliveness of living and the beauty of being alive. And we get to choose that. We get to have that no matter what is going on. Fires, job loss, like financial upset. It's like when we choose to have ease, joy, and glory with all of it, no matter what it is, so many possibilities come pouring into our worlds as the different future. And, we say a lot, like it never shows up like you think it will. So sometimes as you're stepping into a different space and more is about to show up in your life, it might look like quite the opposite. When when you start to really move in the direction of something greater, you might need the destruction or the deconstruction. And I have definitely seen that in my own life in so many ways. I've been through a lot of things in my life, and it may not look like it, because I don't publicly talk about trauma and drama in my life because I don't have it. And that doesn't mean that I don't have intense things that happen with my body sometimes, or, really difficult things with I've gone through some really intense things with my family. And, I've had a lot of stuff in my lifetime that has been challenging. I just am a frickin' Pollyanna. And I choose to see it all with eyes of curiosity. And I actually see everything that happens in my life as an opening into something that is more and greater, and that requires me to sometimes dig deep and really choose ease, joy, and glory with how I handle things, and not use my psychic abilities, my energetic capacities against me, but actually use my energetic awareness to open doors to new possibilities that have never existed, to explore frontiers that don't currently exist in the world, but that can and will, particularly if I pursue them, because we each have this unique awareness that nobody else has. And it's ours to discover, it's ours to explore, it's ours to open those doors. And the way that we open those doors is by asking questions, making choices, and being willing to receive the gift that is available to us in this unique expression, this unique lifetime, with the unique awareness that you have. For X-Men, for humanoids, our awareness is so unique and so different. And when you commit to celebrating that, to acknowledging that, to exploring it, to having way more of it, no matter what, and to being as different as you're going to be, and receiving all the judgment that may come with it from other people, it's okay. It's going to happen. Judgment is going to happen. But when you commit to the exploration of that, then you are constantly opening new doors in your own world, and by doing so in the world, even if you never say a thing to anybody about any of it. So it's just, there's such a beautiful space with all of this that is available. And it is really being willing to know what we know, ask for what we would like to ask for, and receive this reality, that, and the acknowledgement and the awareness that everything is a gift. Everything can be a gift, however challenging it may seem. And if you take two people whose, maybe their homes burned down, and one person is absolutely committed to the trauma and drama of it, and devastation and victimhood, I get it. Like, that would be a very easy road to take, and it requires a lot of courage to be so different as to go, well, okay. One of my favorite quotes is actually, the barn's burnt down. Now I can see the moon. And when I heard that quote so long ago, I was probably like 22 or something. I was like, that makes so much sense to me. It's like, you can't change it. No amount of trauma, drama, upset, intrigue, victim is going to change what has occurred. But what you do have that is your greatest gift is the awareness of a future and the willingness to use your psychic, to have psychic abilities with the entire universe, and acknowledge that the movement of the universe is inherently and always moving in the direction of greater. If we decontextualize that, if we take our psychic awareness out of trying to fit it into this reality and funnel it through the worlds of other people and what already exists, then we really get to have something different. And that is my invitation to all of us. And I'm going to be doing an X-Men class, a 2-day X-Men class that is it's coming up in a couple of weeks. I believe January 29th is when it starts. And that is that's a class that is a really deep dive into this, I would say. And the focus of that particular class is going to be, it's called Disabilities or Abilities. So really looking at, is that a disability or is it actually an ability? And the focus of this particular one is going to be on the exploration of going beyond our psychic abilities with the world, and into a very different future and a very different awareness of possibility. And so you're invited to come and play. It does have a prerequisite of the Access Consciousness Foundation class and or the 1-day X-Men class. And you can find that on my website, heathernichols.com, on the events page. And I'm also going to be doing I think in a week it starts, is an energetic series called Need and Tug, which is really about having this world, this universe of ask and receive, and using our awareness and our psychic capacities with the entire universe to relax into the pulling in, the receiving of what it is that we're asking for. The space that is available now in the world and in the universe is so different, and it is a time for need and tug in ways that we may not realize. And when we try to create from the old stories, that doesn't really work. The old stories, the old ways of doing things they're dying off. And that's a great thing, because there's new spaces that are opening up, but those spaces they're not as solid. They're not as charged. They're not as noisy. You have to relax into the silence and the perceiving of those spaces. I think I'll do a video on that, because I feel like there's a whole other thing I want to say about that, but I'm going to wind this down. So check my YouTube. I'll do a video for that. But relaxing into those spaces of receiving that are actually available, but if you're looking for the same ways of being, the same noise, the same stories, you're not going to find them. And then that can create anxiety if you're using your psychic abilities with the world. If you're not, then, you're going to, just that space that is showing up right now. That's the silence, and from there, I know for me, my body starts to hum and I start to be, it was so relaxing. That's us. That's us. On that note, thank you so much. Bye for now. Thank you for joining me for the Entrepreneurial Biome podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, and subscribe. For more resources, check out my website at heathernichols.com and my social media channels as well. Have a beautiful day, and remember that your business thrives when you do.